it's very nice to have these moments, even if it isn't for very long, but that brings some kind of reflection, some kind of new thoughts, new ideas into our lives, and that help us in one or another way to reach some kind of answers that we might be looking for, or some things that we haven't even thought about that might come up, and it can be nice realizations to all of us. So today's topic is about the Little Prince, like you all know. And this book is a wonderful book, right? It was written in 1943 by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, and it's been one of the most translated and the most read books in the world. And it's very interesting because one might say that it is for children, but adults, grown-ups, they have been reading this book much more than children, even than teenagers, because it has some kind of fascination about the story that is a very, very simple story, but yet very powerful and very inspiring, that touches us in ways that we cannot explain even. There is a mystery, there is some kind of mystery behind the symbols that are sometimes very clear, but sometimes they are very mysterious, and there is maybe a message behind what these symbols mean and what the characters go through. There is always like a little hidden message that even if we really connect to the story with a different, in a different way, we might see what is it that is there behind the words. And it is a story, of course, about friendship, about love, about loneliness, about a journey of life, a journey of discovery that he goes through, and that somehow we can recognize ourselves in. Because in one or another moment in our lives, we might be going through a journey of self-discovery. Not every one of us does that, not all the time, but it can be that a moment comes in our lives that we want to go that journey of self-discovery, a journey of life indeed. And the Little Prince invites us to that journey of discovery, of finding out what is it that is inside of us that is essential. And yet, above all, find out that what is essential and not forget to not leave it behind, to never forget that what is essential, because that's also something that is a message of this book. Do never leave behind that what is essential for you. Do never forget that what is essential for you. And we might do that sometimes. We all do that sometimes. We forget a little what is it that is important for us, and we just go caught by so many other things that go on in our lives, and we end up forgetting what's essential. So like everybody knows, or most of you probably know, the story is about this boy, the little prince, that leaves his planet, that he lives his little world to go on a journey. He leaves his little world and he goes through 6 different planets until he gets to the 7th planet, that is the Earth. And there he meets the snake, he meets the garden of roses, he meets the fox, he meets the pilot, and he goes learning a lot and he goes teaching a lot throughout that journey. And so what we would like to do now is to go a little bit through that story, and to go a little bit also into some of the symbols of the story. But we would like to invite you all to really connect to the symbol and feel how is that for you. If that rings any kind of bell, how does it feel when we talk about these things? So it is really an invitation for going deeper into what is it in these symbols, in this story, that can connect to myself. Some traits, some characteristics that happen there that can be related to our own lives, to our own consciousness, to our own essence. So the book starts with the pilot, and we are going a little bit through the story. We'll try to do it the quickest possible. And of course, I won't go through all the symbols because it's impossible in such a short time. And if any of you then in the end would like to add something about a symbol, something that you have reflected on that wasn't talked about, please just come in and add. So the story begins with the pilot, that is actually who narrates the story. And he is a grown up, right? There in the story, he is a grown up. But he was a very creative, a very pure and very intuitive child that could see the essence of things. He could see the inside of things. And one of the biggest conflicts he has is how can and growing up not see the essence of something. I can see the essence. I can see what's inside something, but a growing up can't. Growing ups are so difficult, he says. And then he draws this, which is a very famous drawing from The Little Prince. The pilot, as a child, he draws the snake that is digesting an elephant. And every time he shows that to a grown up, the grown up thinks that is a hat. He cannot see what is the essence of that drawing. So the state of purity, the state of intuition that we all have as a child, and some of us, we still keep that more alive than others. That intuition, that purity of a child that we all have is put in contrast with a grown-up that we can relate to, all of us also, that throughout time has lost contact with that innocence, with that purity of heart. And as growing up, we can only see the outside, that what is the form, the external form of something, we go losing bit by bit the ability of being more intuitive, of seeing through something for its essence, and not only what it looks like, not only the form of something. So he has that conflict, and he feels very misunderstood. And well, life passes by, and in the book it's said also that he grows up very alone, the pilot, and then he becomes himself a grown-up, right? He becomes himself someone who knows that innocence, that purity, that intuition. He knows that, but he has been growing, and he turns to be a pilot. And then at some point, he is flying his airplane over the desert, and the airplane has a problem in its heart. Very interesting with that also, it's not the engine of the airplane, it's the heart of the airplane. And then he has a problem with the engine, and he falls in the desert. And there, in the desert, completely away from problems, expectations, completely away from any other grown up, completely in silence. The desert can mean silence, an opportunity that we get to be with ourselves. And there in that desert, in that silence, he meets for the first time the purity again. He meets the little prince. That is this being that is like a sunshine, that he doesn't really understand. Where does he come from? Because there is nothing around. But this creature that is so pure and so innocent, that is that what he knows within him, he meets in that moment of silence, in that moment of feeling that everything else, expectations, problems, are a little put aside. And in that moment that he meets then the little prince, there is like something that goes on. The little prince asks him to draw a sheep, right? You all probably know about that. And the pilot is a grown up, right? He first draws this sheep that is very sheep-like, that has an external shape of a sheep. And then the little prince goes, yeah, it's funny, it doesn't look like a sheep. Even he's not satisfied with that. And then the pilot draws another one, and it's yet not that what the little prince expected. And then the pilot draws that is a box. And then he says, the sheep you asked for is inside. So then the pilot connects again to that capacity of seeing through the form, seeing through the external appearance of something. Then he reaches again within himself that purity, that intuition. And then the little princess, well, that's exactly what I was looking for. That's exactly what I wanted for a sheep. So, and then from that moment on, there is a connection between them. And that's beautiful. There is a connection that grows into a friendship, a relationship that they will have, and nevertheless grows into the little prince telling and sharing more about the three very basic questions: where he came from, what he was doing there on earth, how did he end up there, and where he's going to. And those are essential questions that, with telling the whole story of his life, he is going to answer to those three questions. So then what happens is that the little prince starts sharing about where he comes from. And he comes from a little world, a little planet, a little asteroid that, just like all of us, it is his little world. We all have our little private individual world where there are good seeds and bad seeds, like he describes, where you can see the sunrise and you can see the sunset. There is light and there is darkness, where there are volcanoes that, if you don't clean them right, they can explode and they can destroy the planet. They can destroy the world of the little prince. They can destroy that little asteroid that he lives on. And all the good seeds, they grow into flowers, and that's beautiful. And eventually those flowers, they also pass away. The bad seeds, on the other hand, they grow into baobabs that are these huge trees that, if you don't pull out before they grow, they can destroy the entire planet. And destroying the entire planet, there will be no place anymore for any flower. So our little world, each one of us, we also can recognize with a certain awareness that there are good seeds within us that grow into flowers. But there are also what is called the bad seeds in the book, that if we can relate to so much within us, that if we are not aware, if we are not, if we don't pay attention to those, they can grow into baobabs. So what happens there, and it's so interesting and so beautiful, is that the little prince is very attentive. He's looking after his planet. He knows that there are good and bad seeds. He knows that if he doesn't clean the volcanoes, they can explode and they can destroy his entire world. And paying attention to that, to cleaning the volcanoes, even the volcano that is not active. He even says that there are 3 volcanoes, 2 are active and 1 is inactive, but one never knows. So he cleans the 3 of them. So that effort of paying attention, it's also an internal effort related to all of us, of being attentive to keep the purity of our heart of our mind, of our actions. It is very important to keep that in order. If we are not aware, we can easily be taken by all sorts of distractions, all sorts of baobabs that come and that eventually can carry us so far away from the roses, from the flowers that grow in the planet. So it is a very beautiful awareness that he brings in that part, telling about the planet and with all the symbols there, with the good and bad seed and volcanoes and all of that. Until the point when at sunrise, when the sun is rising, there is a rose that blooms, right? And that is one of the most special moments also in the story. There is a rose that blooms, and that rose doesn't pass away. That rose is eternal. That rose has a fragrance, has a perfume that is just wonderful. But at the same time, that rose has its thorns. That rose has pride. She has desires that can never be satisfied. She has fear. She is very vain, with feeling that she is the most precious and beautiful thing in the whole galaxy. And there, with the rose, we can relate that red rose to our hearts. On one hand, it's the heart in each one of us and in all of us that carries the essence of who we truly are, that carries that what is eternal, that carries that what is noble, like universal love, like the innocence of a pure child. It is in our hearts that there is something that is divine, that is so pure and so wonderful, that its fragrance is the most wonderful thing of the whole galaxy. But on the other hand, our hearts are also home for all kinds of desires that are unstoppable, desires that can never be satisfied. It's also home for fear. It's also home for pride. And there, the little prince becomes a slave at some point to the rose, to all these wishes that come from his rose, from all the vanity from that rose. He becomes a slave. He's totally caught, hypnotized by her. And he, at some point, he gets fed up by that. At some point, he reaches a point there where he cannot go on with serving those desires, with serving that fear, that pride. He cannot go on with serving that. He's tired. He doesn't see the point in that. And he decides to go on a journey and leave his planet, leave the rose behind. And in the moment that he decides to go on that journey, something very beautiful happens with that rose, with that heart that was lost in all of that. The rose then says, I'm sorry. Of course, I love you, she says. She expresses the love for him in that moment. And she says, I'm sorry, it's my fault that you haven't known this all the way or since always. She says, it's my fault, but I love you. And from that moment on, she leaves all that vanity, all the fear. She's ready for expressing her perfume. She's ready for being that eternal rose that doesn't die, that is not afraid for one or two caterpillars that will turn into butterflies. She's not afraid anymore. And in that, the little prince carries that love of the rose within him. He leaves his planet completely taken by that love, but still needing to go a journey of self-realization, of self-discovery, because he himself cannot yet see the essence. He cannot yet understand everything. And later in the book, he says even that he was too young to love the rose in that moment, meaning that he was too immature to love the rose in that moment. But it's no problem because she loves him. The love of the rose is with him and will accompany him all the way through his journey. So he goes on his journey of self-realization and carries her with him. He needs to awaken. He needs to find a little better out who he is, what's the essence of everything. And there, the journey starts, and he goes through all the 6 planets before arriving on Earth, that is the 7th planet. And all these planets have one grown up living there. And all of these inhabitants, so it's one inhabitant for planet, the little prince realizes that these inhabitants, they have very weird professions. And they are also very self-obsessed. They are very obsessed with themselves in general. And the first one is the king. So it shows us a little bit of the wish for power. And then the second one is the vain man, that it's so absurd and so into himself. He is the most beautiful. Everybody should praise him. Everybody should adore him. He's the best. And then the third planet is the drunk man that drinks to forget that he's drinking. And then the businessman that is so lost with numbers and he wants to own the whole galaxy. He wants to own the stars. But what for? He asks, the little prince asks, and he says, I just want to own them. They are mine. I want them. He wants to have them. And then the lamplighter that keeps on doing the same task over and over again, lighting up the light and putting it out over and over again, following orders without even knowing why he's following that. And the last one, the sixth planet, is the geographer that is very, very occupied with theory. He doesn't even know what is out there, what is there to see. He's very occupied with books, with writing, theory, and that is what counts for him. And those are all traits that can be recognized in ourselves also. Be it one or two or three or all of them, we can all recognize at some point that this state of being a little more selfish, that a growing up, like it said there in the book, the growing ups that have lost the ability of seeing the essence, of looking and seeing with intuition what's inside, that the grown-ups that have lost that, they are very blind and they are very occupied with themselves. And be it for a wish of power, a wish for controlling or owning things and having and vanity, that it's not only related to physical vanity, but it's also related to the knowledge vanity, the intellectual vanity. So all of that it's really like a self-discovery. It is really like a journey of recognition. What is it that is within me, that lives in me, of all of that? So he goes through all of that and he finally gets to Earth. And there on Earth, he falls in the desert and he meets the snake. And just in short, the snake is a symbol, a very important symbol of the soul journey in self-realization and transformation. Because snakes shed their skin, so they transform. It's like caterpillars that transform also into butterflies. So snake can be a symbol of coming to the planet Earth. He's going towards this, he's going his process of transformation. He's going to be transformed somehow. And then he walks through the desert, mountains, and ice, and he comes to this garden. And he comes to the garden of roses, and that's very, very beautiful. And there something important happens. He becomes very, very disappointed, because all of those roses, they are just the same as the rose that is in his planet, as his rose. But I thought my rose was unique in the whole galaxy. But no, I was wrong. There are thousands of those roses here. And my rose is not unique. It's just one of 1,000 or thousands. And he goes very disappointed. And that shows. And then he goes and he even cries because of that. He's very sad, very upset because of that. But that shows how he still needs some guidance. He still needs to learn what is it that is essential. He hasn't found out yet what is it that is essential. He just feels very upset, but he feels just that sorrow when he cries. And then he cries, he sleeps, and then in the next day, he hears this voice. And one of the most beautiful moments and important moments also of the story happen now. That is when he hears the voice of the fox that is under an apple tree, right? As you might remember, probably remember. The apple tree, that is the symbol of completeness. It's the symbol of love. And the little prince he wishes to be friends with that fox. He wishes to have that completeness. He wants to feel that completeness. He wants to belong with someone, somewhere. He has that longing within him. And then he asks the fox, can you be my friend? And then the fox says, well, you have to tame me first. With taming means you have to create a bond with me first. You have to nourish me, because if you don't create a bond with me, if you don't nourish me, you only be another boy amongst 1,000 of other boys, and I'll just be a fox. And there is the first and very important first time that he gets an insight of something that it's really life-changing for him. He realizes for the first time that his rose is unique, because he was tamed by his rose and the rose was tamed by him. So his rose is unique. She's not like all of those 5,000 roses in that garden. She's not. Because she is his rose. She is not many roses. She's one out of many. It's not an external rose, but it is an inner rose instead of external rose. It is his rose in the heart. It is the essence of his being. It's the eternal essence. It is the love, the universal love that lives within him. That is the rose. And then the fox tells him these initiation words that are so wonderful. And then he's ready to listen to those words, because he has awakened, he has realized that his rose is one of a kind, is unique. And then the fox tells him it is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. And then she says, men have forgotten about that, but you must not forget, she says. So it is only with the heart that one can see the essence. It is only with the heart that one can see the sheep within the box, that one can see the elephant within the snake. It is only with the heart that we can see the essence in everything we do, in everyone we meet. It's only with the heart, because if we try to forget about that and be caught with what our mind and our eyes are trying to show us, we'll miss the essential. So it is something to be reminded of, because also, as the fox said, the men have forgotten about that, but you must not forget. And that in itself already tells something. It tells us that everybody, everyone has that essence within, that eternal rose within, but we just forgot. We were carried away, far away from that what is essential. We have forgotten how to see things with our hearts. We have forgotten, but we know that. It's not that we have to learn again. We know that. We have to trust in that. So then after that, the little prince is ready, and he goes then back to the desert. And there in the desert, he meets the pilot, and he's ready to go back home. He's ready to be reunited with his rose. He has learned, he has grown, he has, above all, learned to see the essence of things that you can only see with your heart. And then there in the desert, there are also some things that happen that are very interesting, with the well and being thirsty and all of that. The well can quench the thirst of the body, but also the thirst of the soul. And the little prince even says there in the desert, yeah, water can also be good for the heart, he says. But he's ready to go back home. His journey was done, and he is ready to be reunited with his rose. And there, just one last detail is that he has the help of the snake then to go back to his planet. The snake that symbolizes the transformation. So he's not the same anymore. He changed completely. It's just like the butterfly. So he's completely transformed. And in that, the pilot, then the next morning, when he looks for the little prince, he can't find his body, he can't find anything. Because he was indeed completely transformed and reborn into a new reality, into his own planet. He was reborn into this realm of love, of freedom,